All right, well, let's get started. I'm Jody with the Bass Nerds, and I'm here with my good buddy
Mark!
And we are the Bass Nerds. And
we used to have an instant rap air horn button that we would push, and we just keep forgetting to bring it. So I just do it with my mouth.
Yeah. Right. And then we are here with, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Donny Benet, and glad to be here.
Awesome. We appreciate you coming and stopping by, Donny, coming through town, playing Thalia Hall. That should be a good time.
It will be a good time.
I was what's the word I'm looking for? Refamiliarizing myself with some of your tracks on the way over. I feel I was in a band not long ago that would have been opening for you right now at Thalia Hall. We were just like a lot of synth driven, like electronic synth. I love the bass playing on all your stuff. I love that it stands out just a little bit. You know, it's just like, it's not like the focal point, but as like, I think maybe some casual listener might not even really notice.
Well, it's just there to disguise my poor voice, my poor singing.
No, I think it fits.
It works. Everything works around the bass line. So
yeah, no, it sounds great. So I think like best to kind of like, where did your musician brain start? Did you come from a family of musicians? Was it early on?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, third generation musician.
Yeah.
My grandfather was a drummer / piano accordionist. What else did he play? At one point he was playing organ and drums at the same time. My father is a saxophonist and a keyboard player and a music teacher. My both aunties as well, his sisters were musicians. Then my mum's a music teacher. They both met in college.
Yeah.
Then her family, her brothers also tinkered a bit. They weren't tinkered a bit. They weren't professional musicians, but one of them had a very nice bass that I got. And then I've got two brothers and a sister. Two brothers are both musicians. The youngest one's a drummer. The older one, I'm a middle child. The older one's the saxophonist in my band. And then my youngest sister.
Wait, say that word again.
Saxophonist?
Yes.
Yeah, saxophonist? Saxophonist.
No,
saxophonist?
I like saxophonist.
Yeah. What do you say, saxophonist?
Saxophonist.
No, I'm definitely a saxophonist.
Yeah. Hey boy, play that saxophonist, boy.
Yeah, there you go.
So two brothers, and then a sister who also is a musician, but wisely chose not to do it professionally.
Yeah.
Very wisely. Although she did become a chef, which is probably as
just
crazy.
as hard.
Yeah. Not anymore though. But yeah. So that, and then also like my wife, we met at college as well. So she's a violinist. So it's pretty. We're kind of powerless to do anything else.
Right.
Yeah. And then I just grew up with music around me all the time. The main thing I got, Dad would just. We used to tinker in the shed a lot. We all rode motorcycles because we grew up in the country. And Dad was always fixing shit up, and he had a cassette player, and he'd just play cassettes over and over and over. Yeah. And so it'd be like Elvis, Sam and Dave, Wilson Pickett, Otis Redding, Stones, just heaps of stuff.
Yeah.
And a little bit of jazz, not that much. And then I think I got a Hendrix CD for my 12th birthday, and I was like, man, this Mitch Mitchell guy, Noel Redding is amazing. And after I was like, yeah, he's like, it's actually Jimmy playing bass most of the time, I think. And then Dad brought me a video home from school that he taught at, because growing up in the country, I had nothing around.
Yeah.
And it was this program called Rock School from the 80s, an English show. It's great, and they had 5 episodes. It was like a heavy metal episode, a blues episode, funk episode, and reggae episode. The funk episode was my favorite. That had on it an interview with Larry Graham, interview with Bootsy Collins, and an interview with Noel Rodgers and Bernard Edwards, and it was.
That's it.
So that was and I remember that same summer I got a bass. I begged my parents for a new set of strings, and they got me. I think it was like a Dean Markley or some terrible strings, and they knew. And then I could finally slap because I had new strings.
Yeah.
I worked it out, and so I was self-taught for years, and I've always been. And then I picked up, like most electric bass players, went to high school. They passed me the double bass, so I taught myself that. Got a teacher, then went to the Sydney Conservatorium and became a jazz double bassist. Learned off a great teacher. It was fun. Played with a whole bunch of jazz guys in Australia, paid my dues, cut my teeth, and then fell back into doing Donny Benet.
Nice.
And so the double bass is kind of sitting up, much to the dismay of my old teacher. I've got his old bass. It's leaning up in the corner, and yeah, I started playing the music that I loved when I was 16 the most. So, and it started as kind of this tiny small thing, and now it's this worldwide force of playing all the smallest venues in the world.
Oh, I wouldn't say the smallest venues.
It's turned into this other thing, but yeah, but definitely it's been impossible to escape music in my family.
It sounds like it. Everybody's playing, brothers, sisters, and aunts and uncles. It seems like it was.
In addition to that, like it's not just like instrument playing, but your siblings also have experience with instrument building, repairs. And
stuff. So James, James the drummer, he has Pug cymbals in Sydney, Australia. He's one of the great jazz drummers in Australia, and he's also that enables him to make cymbals and player would want them. That's the tricky thing I always find with instruments is a lot of the times they're made by builders that are great with their hands, but not great with their hands on the instrument or with a sympathetic musical ear.
Yeah.
Which I think is really the amount of you go on social media and look on Instagram. There's wow, these basses look amazing. They're relicked, and then you see the guy that's making them play them, and you're like, whoa, this guy's can barely play like Mary Had a Little Lamb.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't turn you off, but with James when he plays his cymbals, I mean, his playing is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And then so he knows what he wants out of it, and he's really good at deciphering that sound.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's great. And then my older brother Dan, he's a brass and woodwind specialist. So he's just moved over to Italy, and he fixes everyone's horns when he was in Sydney, and he's a great player as well. So same thing, he knows what a player wants out of their instrument when it's set up. So yeah, they're both in my band, and they're both very good musicians as well. So
and do you all get along quite well?
Not too bad, yeah. I mean, we're all been, yeah.
What makes
we're brothers. We're brothers that like each other, which I always find it weird coming from a large family where there's siblings that hate each other.
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely butt heads now and again, but that's all forgotten 5 minutes later.
Mm.
But it's we've been around Europe multiple times in a little van, and this is our second time doing that 15,000-mile drive around the States. So yeah, it's fun. It's cool to do it.
That's awesome. How would you describe, genre-wise, if you had to pick a genre for Donny Benet?
It's so tricky, because I used to say I don't know, it's like indie pop, but it's not really. It's like bass players' music, but then it's not just bass player. I don't know, I don't know how to, because I'll say it's kind of funk R&B. It's well, it's not really, because I don't have a funk R&B voice. Everyone tells me I sound like Michael Franks, which is probably I'm kind of getting it a bit more now, but I just try and make records that all my favorite 70s and 80s studio musicians. Yeah. I want them to sound like that.
I mean, I think that's actually a great albums for your 70s and 80s studio musicians. That's what really, I think, a good way to describe it. I think, like I had mentioned, I briefly mentioned, if I were in the band I were in years ago, we'd be opening for you at Thalia Hall, and we had kind of a similar vibe, a lot of synth stuff. I'm a bass player, so there was some heavy bass influence in it, but it was I hesitate to use the word down tempo, but dance, jazz, synth, pop, it's just 15% of a lot of different things.
It's like a retro indie pop vibe.
Yeah, I guess so, kind of. Yeah, I mean, it's.
I think it's. I classify it in my head as turbo sleaze.
Yeah, I mean,
but that all makes sense to me, because then I think about all those records from the late 70s.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The peak era of audio engineering and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm and you have that natural ability to kind of really capture those sounds.
Because I'm using all instruments from, that's the big thing is, I've got an incredible synth collection, which I was really lucky enough to acquire during the GFC, because the Australian government gave out stimulus packages, so our economy didn't crash, and for once in our lifetime, our dollar was at parity with the US dollar. Yeah. Which was amazing. So then I was like, cool, an Oberheim OB8 is $4,000. Yeah. Great. And I contacted, when Perfect Circuit Audio was much smaller, I forget the guy I was speaking to, the owner, and I was like, hey, here's a list of synths I want. He's like, I've got them all in the warehouse. And he's like, $4,000. So I was early 30s, without kids, still had a good income. So I just bought all that stuff, and the big one was getting an LM1 drum machine, which is the Prince drum machine. Mm-hmm. He came out 2015 maybe or something, and I watched it and I was like, I have to get, like I already had a Linn drum.
Yeah, but the predecessor is the LN1.
That's the one. Yeah, that's the, and then they're like 30 grand US or something now. It's insane. Oof. I paid nothing near that. What I got it for was like a joke now.
Yeah.
At the time it was enough, but I was like, I'm paying, I think I paid like 5 grand Australian for like essentially a box with 12 samples in it. Yeah. I was like, no, it's it's the, and so using all those, like, and I had friends that would use plugins. I'm like, it just doesn't, I can tell, like an LM1, the drum, the snare is sampled with a bit of air in front of it. So it's always like, it's a little bit late.
Yeah.
If I hear a recording, I'm like, that's a plugin because it's like
right on.
So it all sounds like that because it's recorded on those records. I'm not doing to tape, which when I get a little bit more money, and I'm going to start even going further back and doing that stuff. But it's like definitely the only way of like doing it. Like when I was speaking to with the F-Bass guys the other day, I was like, I don't use this bass for recording because the pickups are amazing, the Aguilars, but they're just too clean.
Yeah.
And if I'm putting that next to a 1982 Linn drum, LM1, it sticks out. So then I'm like, I'll grab a 77 jazz bass or I think my 81 Stingray, and that's the sound, and that's got the, you listen back to the signal and it's like, it's a bit noisy and a bit funky and perfect, like it lands in.
Right.
So I think it's been really sympathetic to that, and because of the whole, like, I think, quote myself, I'm like, making an 80s throwback album is easy, but it's like, if you don't, you can pick, someone's trying to do this hard, but they've got like a brand new Ibanez bass on there, or like, they're using a drum, they're using like you can pick the drum sounds they're using. It's like, nothing's not quite, mine's kind of to the point, pretty honest. So it's like, and I'm just lucky I got all those instruments, and that's, like, I don't even use MIDI. I'm just like, I think I've got MIDI on my drum kit, but I play everything in, and it's like, I probably have that jazz background of like, the take's the take.
Yeah.
And I'll go back and tidy shit up, but it's like, the thought of me like sitting there and writing something out MIDI is just weird. Like, I remember dropping by a friend, and when Ableton was first coming out, he's like, man, this is how kids make music. And he's like, you get an Ableton pad and you hit that, and that's a chord, and then it'll suggest chord changes. I'm like, that's insane. Like, no wonder shit sounds the same. So I'll play something in that's arpeggiated, and then, if it's really out, I might shift it over a bit, because if Steely Dan had Pro Tools, they'd do the same.
They would have saved a lot of money.
What's the drum machine they had? What's it called?
I know which one you're talking about, but I can't remember.
It's like most of the record budget is spent on the drum computer they made.
Yeah, amazing. Otis McDonald was here just like last week. Just happened to have a layover.
Yeah,
and we got to chatting, and he was the one who educated me on. I was familiar with the Linn drum, and then he told me about the LN1, and like he happens to live like really close to the guy.
For it.
Yeah, but like the guy who does all the like the programming and like can like fix stuff up, because I came across one in a studio acquisition or something like that.
Is that the guy in studio or Burbank? Maybe.
I don't know. No, he's out in. So Otis McDonald owns Hyde Street in San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
And awesome bass player. Actually, really good drummer, but he's just very soulful and shit.
Yeah.
A producer, I think that you would mesh really well with.
Cool.
I'm sure you guys are following each other.
Maybe.
Probably.
I gotta check.
But the LN1, like, there is something very special about it, and like, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, listening to those old records, like the older Prince records with that on there, and that airiness of the snare, and the slight, like, not delay, but like it's just like slightly behind.
Well, that's weird, 'cause I don't want to sound like a wanker about it, but it's like, because everyone should make, like, the great thing about, the time I've been making music, like, just how accessible it is to make music.
Yeah.
Like, it's awesome. Anyone can make a record now.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, power to, that's great. But it's like, if you can afford it, if you can afford to eat a fine dining, you go for it, but you can go to like a cheap Vietnamese place and still get a great bowl of soup for nothing, and have the same outcome. So it's like, I'm not being like, if you want to make a record, you have to have 80 synths.
Yeah.
You don't, but I can kind of pick it, and
Yeah.
I mean, if it's just having the ears and the education about it, I guess, which you will get then, because, all that stuff, it will be a gateway drug for some people, and they're like, oh, I've got a brand new Prophet. It's cool, but I really want the old one with, the Rev 2 with these chips in it or whatever. Like, you can go down that road.
Yeah.
Well, Mark is often, mentions like the right tool for the job.
Yeah.
Right. And the sound I hear coming out of your music, like that seems like the right tools.
That's how
for
I
what you're
justify all
doing,
my
right?
basses to my wife. But no, I've got 11 basses at the moment, and they are all tools, and they all do something very different.
Right.
Like my 66p bass will sound different to my 77p bass.
Yeah.
Which will sound different to, this used to be a P bass a few days ago, to that. And then a certain song will call for a certain thing, and it's like, I'm pretty good. It goes both ways. The way, if there's an old guy that's got a bit of gear that they're hoarding and they don't want to they're like, oh, I don't know if I can let go of it. And I'll say, well, I'll use it. And it's an instrument that's meant to be played. And so for me then, if a bit of gear sits around for 2 or 3 years, and like I usually go through like a year, like 1 year I'll play this bass, the next year I'll play that bass. If it gets to like it's sitting there for a few years and I'm like, okay, someone else needs to play this because I've got this kind of romantic notion of like instruments should be played, not kept on.
You are preaching to the choir.
No.
This is great.
I'm the same. I got 3 instruments on reverb right now for sale.
We're sitting in Chicago Music Exchange, by the way. Thank you for letting us use your space.
CME.
And while working here, anytime like a collector grade anything came in, it's cool to see something like, in its to see it and think like, oh, this is what it would have looked like in its prime.
Yeah.
But as a musician, it's like, oh, these were meant to be played.
Exactly.
I don't get as excited seeing them, and then like having the ones that are just completely annihilated looking, where a collector would be like, oh, they didn't take care of it. It's like, well, but they played it and enjoyed it, and
exactly.
it took care of them.
Well, even this bass, like I took it after 2 months of owning it, I put it down on a stand in a rehearsal studio that didn't have foam, like it was dark, and it gouged out the big thing out of the wing. I was like, oh no. And so I was saying to Marcel at F-Bass, like, oh, when I come over, can we fix this? Yeah, we'll fix it up. So I was there the other day and we put it up on the bench and he's like, your frets are all wearing away. He's like, that's great, like you're playing it. They were really excited.
That's so
they're like,
sweet.
this is cool. And then we flip it over and he's like, and I saw all these dents and scratches near the lead input. He's like, oh, that's where you've been trying to find your lead. I was like, oh, forget it. And then I said, look, when I was in Europe, something fell on it, it got dropped, then I was on stage and I can see all the dents on the side of the neck. I'm like, and it's not even a year old, but it's been around the world twice, and so, and like, the frets have gone yellow from my, when I get the extra sodium from all the tour food. But that's cool, like that's great. And if, like I've got an 84 Ken Smith I've got, it came from Japan, like that's been played, it's all, near the pickup, it's all gouged out and there's dents and stuff in it. That's cool.
I love
like
wabi-sabi.
I love that bass, by the way.
It's pretty
like
cool.
Those old Kens. I mean, any Ken Smith is usually cool, but
it's an interesting bass to play. It's definitely like talking about the right tools for the right job. It's definitely a single-use tool, but it's a very unique tool.
Yeah.
So like if I'm working on another instrumental record at the moment to follow up from I did one called Le Piano, and I want to do a series like Le Piano, Il Basso for the bass and La Batterie for the drums. And so I'm working on the bass one. And as a bass, it's very particular. I wouldn't use it as bass. Like it just doesn't feel enough. But then going for like a 70s Stanley Clarke fusion kind of vibe, it's perfect. Like I'm playing a few melodies.
Pickup.
Yeah, it's amazing. I even got a neck pickup, I've got light strings, and I'm doing like a Stanley kind of style where you're plucking really hard. Yeah. And it just sounds, it's like, cool, that sounds like 70s fusion, like late 70s kind of alembic, early active electronics. I'm like, that thing has a space. I don't need to sell it. It looks amazing. I pick it up and play it all the time. It's not neck through, it's set neck. So it's not a touring bass, but it's cool. But it's definitely like, it's been played, it sounds great. It's a player's bass. One tool, one job.
Yeah. Well, you're working on this series of records.
Yep.
You have the piano, the bass record. Any like?
I started it.
When that's coming out?
Not next year. Maybe in the next year. I'm not sure. I just demolished my house before last year, And so I should be moving to my new house at the end of the year. The studio I've got at the moment sucks, and it's too small, and it's not inspiring, and I'm also just burnt out from this last record I put out. I had some help starting it. I started my own label. I did all the rollout myself. I did all the PR myself, all this kind of stuff.
You're doing it all. I mean, like I asked, like, oh, can you? When we were like booking this interview, I was like, oh, cool. Like, you know, I don't want to bug you, but like I can talk to, like, if you got management, I can talk to your manager. And, like, you're talking to him, baby.
Yeah.
Signed, The Don.
No. I mean, I am going to have my fictitious manager called Tony Scandali soon.
Oh, perfect.
Which is
a nod to Andy Kaufman.
Oh, I just had an accordion called Scandali, and so that's why.
Perfect.
It's a good name, and then the name of his company will be Synths Entertainment. So it's Scandali Entertainment.
Yeah.
But it's like, and the card, his business card will be like have aftershave on it. And I want him to kind of be. It's going to be like he's going to be kind of like a Jersey, like, you know, really overweight, like aggressive Jersey, like
Tony
manager.
Clifton.
Yeah. So that's kind of. But I'm doing it all myself. I did all the rollout. I'm pretty exhausted. I felt like when I went on tour, because we only went to Europe last month, so I felt like when we started the tour, I'd already done a tour, and then starting this tour, I'm like, man, I'm so bugged. So it's when I get back from this, I've got Australian shows and going to Europe again in July just for 2 weeks, and then I'm just gonna. But I have, because I think every day since I reckon July last year, I've been just doing management label stuff. I haven't actually composed for a while, recorded. I was working on it before I moved house. And I think I got all the shit out of the way. So usually when I write a record, I'll write like 10 tracks and I'm like, cool, this could work. Give it a bit, go back to it. I'm like, no, I'll keep one of them. And then I know what I'm not going to write. So when I get back, I think I'm going to have a rest and then just start writing for fun. And I think it'll come out. I mean, but I think I enjoy the recording more than the touring. So I'm kind of wanting to do that a bit more, I guess.
I enjoy the camaraderie that comes from touring if you're with the right people.
Yeah.
But the older I get and the more responsibilities I have, I think I have more fun in the studio when it's my day, you know?
Yeah. I mean, leaving behind a young family, it's getting tougher. And then the kids are growing up and they're like starting to ask more questions like, why do you have to go away? I'm like, I've got to pay for the house.
Yeah.
But I've said to them, like, when we get back, I'm not going anywhere for a while, so it's cool.
All right, you have kids, you're in Australia.
Yeah.
Bluey.
Yeah, I just got into it. My son didn't like it for ages, and then my daughter really likes it, and now they both like it.
Perfect.
At first, it was a bit like Queensland. I thought it was because it's made in Queensland, set in Queensland. And I was like, it's a bit like, pat each other on the back. Like Australia's weird. Sydney's like New York, like fuck you. Melbourne's like we're really cool, fuck Sydney, and then Brisbane's like kind of like weather's great up here, and everyone's really nice, and it's like. And then they're like, fuck you, Sydney. Like, everyone hates Sydney. Yeah. It's because it's great, because we've got you get to the CBD and you can go to a beach in 10 minutes. Yeah. It's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
But, shit's expensive. People are like in a rush, which I kind of like. But, yeah, so Bluey, I was like, it's a bit Queensland. Like, here's an award for being, turning up to work on time. Yeah. But no, I dig it. It's very clever. Yeah. So yeah, my kids like it, and
I'm a massive fan.
It's
massive
big.
fan.
It's big everywhere. It's a great cultural export, I guess.
It very much is. I mean, like there are so many like friends who have young kids as well, and they'll text me like, "A new Bluey just dropped," and I'm like, "Oh shit!" Get the family together, and that had become like baked into our nighttime routine. Like we don't allow a lot of screen time, but like the time we do, we try to make it count. Yeah. And so like right before bed, episodes are so short; they're like 7-8 minutes long, and so we put 2 on, like the boys each get to pick one, and then maybe on the weekend like we'll do 4 episodes. Yeah. So like my wife and I get to pick one as well, and it's great. It's entertaining, and like I'd never thought that a cartoon that was 8 minutes long that's really dedicated towards young children would make me cry, but here we are.
It's good. I mean,
so thank you, Australia.
No, it's how we measure time with my kids. They're like, like, Dad, how long till we get to we're going? I'm like, it's like 2 Bluey episodes. They're like,
that's a great idea.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. But no, it's good. It's very good. It's very indicative of where we were talking off camera about America and Australia, and like I mean, all the travel. I used to shit on Australia because it's like a bit of a country town. It's a bit behind, and I'd go to Europe. I'm like, oh, it's so sophisticated in Europe, and I come to America. I'm like, yeah, America's like a big show. I love it. And then having kids longer, each time I'd fly in, I'd start to be like, oh, it is a really nice place. And it's not that I'm like non-patriotic or anything like that. I mean, we have a different level of proudness, or we're not like patriot, like we don't kiss the flag and all that kind of shit. We're just like, oh, Australia's great.
Yeah. You also recognize your history.
Yeah, and the good thing about Bluey is that it is, so with my son going, I remember my son going to preschool and then teaching 3-year-olds about consent, which is great. And then they also do like a welcome to country at 3-year-olds, whereas when I went to school, it was a lot different. There was a lot of avoidance of that. And so I think with a cartoon like Bluey and a lot of Australian society now, it's like we're recognising it a bit more. There's probably a pocket of older population that try to kind of bury their head in the sand and ignore it, but it's like, I think, and it's not shoved down your throat. It's kind of like done in a really clever and subtle way.
It's very subtle, but it's like, oh, this is so obvious and sweet. And like, if you know what they're doing within the subtleties, you pick up on it. I love, speaking of the consent thing, that all of the children's voices on that show are voiced by children who are related to somebody in the production crew, and they don't have credits for their privacy.
Yeah.
And that's a really important thing.
I didn't even know that, right? Okay.
Like, I think about, like, I've posted photos of my kids online and stuff, but then I've just very recently have been like, why am I doing that? Like,
don't do that.
They didn't tell me that I could do that. And even if they did, like, they don't really know what they're agreeing to.
I was really lucky. I had a friend who's a great singer, and she was like, she has quite a profile over there, and she's like, I don't post any pictures of my kids because, I don't have their permission. And when they're 16 or 18, they can do whatever they want, but until then. And so it's weird because I don't think it's a bit of a, like for me as an artist these days, social media is exhausting. And it's not just for you as an artist. It is exhausting. But it's a necessary evil for me, especially. And it's funny, like I don't, if I want to engage with my audience even more and get them to like me more, I post up until probably last year, I told people I had kids because I'm like, well, and so I could post a picture of my daughter and I playing bass together or something. She's got her red ukulele and we're both jamming or something. And it's like, that'd break everyone and go, oh,
Yes. Yeah.
But I'm like, no, that's.
I don't need a dopamine rush
for
something that I already got.
No, and it's like, it's not my decision to make that. And when she's 16 and she wants to put a picture of her and I watching, singing along to Multiply or something later on, that's fine. But until then, that's not my thing to do.
So I have this this project. It's a hardcore punk band, and there's a song that's it's about it's about vampires. And I thought it'd be really cool to follow my oldest son around, like training to be a vampire hunter, just like montages of him, lots of slow motion, like punching and kicking and like doing flips on the trampoline, drawing pictures of vampires and a list of what they hate and they can't have. And then in the end, you find out that he's like picking something up from, he's like taking the laundry upstairs because that's his job. And then all of a sudden a vampire attacks him and then he like actually kills the vampire in the end. And then I was like, I could make this music video with him, but I have no intention of putting it out there. I think I'm more excited about the family project.
Exactly.
Of just him, like us doing something collaborative and creative. And then no one will get to see it except for us. And like things should exist for ourselves.
Yeah.
For sure. I think I've thought about this for a long time. Like if I'm never having kids, but if I did have kids, like not putting them on social media, I think is the play. But I've got a couple buddies who have children, and what they've done is created like private Facebook groups amongst family and friends, and and I'm still a part. I mean, I see my buddy lives in Japan. I see his kids grow up through Facebook, but it's just 40 people. So I think I agree that I would be cautious and leery of putting my children on the internet. I mean, I think when you're like a baby, you have your baby is born and all little babies kind of look the same.
Yeah, people are very proud of that, and that's fine. Like I don't want to take that away from them, but
sure.
I think I remember this person telling me, and this was like 10 or 15 years before I had kids. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. I'll have to remember that when we have kids of because it's funny. It's like also that thing of like touring's tricky. It's hard for me. Everything's hard, but it's not that hard. Like I've been a musician since 2000, so I'm fine with jumping on planes. I'm fine with doing rehearsals. the hardest thing is like being away from
Sure.
So that's the hard thing for me. But I can't convey that to my audience. Like, oh, you know, I'm over here and you're like, why aren't you coming to Florida? Why aren't you coming to fucking Cleveland? I'm like,
come to Brazil.
It's like, it's because I can only be away at the most for like 3.5 weeks. And, you know, like, I've got to be smart where I hit. And unfortunately, you know, not this time. Like, sorry, but I can't tell you why, you know.
Yeah.
So, but it's a very, it does, like, because we're talking about the touring thing, like, it does get harder. I'm 43 this year. It's getting more expensive. You know, venues taking cuts of merch. I mean, I'm pretty lucky, like, I won't say how I do it, but we've sorted it out so we don't. And that's good, but that's like, it's just becoming and I get it, like, it's just I think now being a musician and touring is like owning a restaurant. I think they're the two most insane businesses you could do.
Right.
Yeah.
And the most physically and emotionally taxing things as well. Like, you know, you open a restaurant, you do well, and then another restaurant who does the same thing as you opens up across the road, and everyone goes there. You know, it's like, oh wow, I sound like the Beatles, and everyone's like, you guys sound like the Beatles, you're great. And then like 2 years later, because I mean, everyone can hear the Beatles, another band that sounds like the Beatles starts up, and they're like, they're the new Beatles. And you're like, there's that great studio quote of like, who is Donny Benet? Get me Donny Benet. Get me someone who sounds like Donny Benet. Who's Donny Benet? It's that kind of thing. So it's like, it is such a crazy thing to do now. And like, I've worked that away. I mean, as I was saying before, like I do my managing, I do my TMing, I do all that stuff. There's a limit to how much I think I can keep on doing it. Like, I try and stay pretty healthy on the road, and you know, I don't drink when I go on tour, just because not that I don't drink much anyway, but it's just like I feel like I'm always clocked on until the last day, and then I'm like, oh, it's all over. I can relax now.
Wearing all those hats, like maybe if you only had to focus on playing music in the show, maybe you would drink a little bit.
Yeah.
But during the day, you're fielding emails and text and organizing hotels.
But again, I wouldn't like. I had a manager, and I was still. I remember I just got a manager, and a friend of mine in LA was like, now you got to manage a manager. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you'll see. And it was just, it wasn't that, but it was more like every decision gets slower and then still has to come through you anyway. So any creative decision still comes. So putting a record out, all the creative decisions still come from me. And so I'm like, well, I knew the work, I did it before I had a manager, and then I was like, well, the workload will be more. I'm like, yeah, but it's already high enough. I may as well, it's like cut out another chain of conversations and and it does seem crazy to do it all, but and then again, like no one will care about it more than you will, and it's like it's also like spending other people's money. Like unless it's your money, you don't care about how it's spent. So it's like, you know, I'll do something as simple as like I'll book all the hotels in really early, and then 2 months out I'll have another look. I'm like, oh, that hotel I booked in Chicago is now $300 cheaper, so then I'll cancel it and book it again.
There's something to be said about having a really good manager who understands what your needs are and what level of control is needed over certain aspects of your career. And I think like an example of one of the best managers I've ever met is Marcus Miller's manager, Harold. Oh my God, he just allows Marcus to be Marcus. And to do that thing because he understands everything else, the creative side, like allowing him to be a creative, to be his own personality and everything. There's this like inherent trust. But whenever you are brought on to like a new management, or like if there's like a management firm and there's no interpersonal connection there or history, of course you're going to be managing them because they don't really quite know you and what makes you tick.
And I think it's also what you've brought, like how you've gotten to where you have at the time, and like for me, there was a really big thing about protecting what Donny Benet does. So like, you know, the amount of Ron Jeremy jokes and memes is like, oh come on, like really? Yeah. But it's just like, and
I didn't know Ron Jeremy played bass.
Exactly.
I get that one.
So many times that could have been like, I could have crossed that line. I'm like, oh yeah, we'll be that character, and it's like, man, that would have, like, if I made that decision 12 years ago, I'd have some pretty big baggage. If I'd gone down, and I was like, no, I've always got to keep it like, it's always got to be on the edge. Like people are kind of confused. Like people have always got to be like, is this guy serious? But then like, oh shit, the music's really good. So it's
so you're serious about that.
Serious about being So it's like I think with anyone you work with, like any creative you work with, you've got to kind of maintain that thing you've been bringing it to. And not to say, like, and different people, like in Australia, people need managers for different ways. Like, we have one radio station. There's a thing called Triple J Unearthed, and you'll be like a 16-year-old kid from rural New South Wales, and you'll submit your song, and then it'll explode, and the next minute you're like playing all of the 5 festivals each year that Australia has. Right. But then you've gone from being a 16-year-old kid that works at a supermarket to like, playing a show in front of 1,000 people, and you're like, I don't know what to do. And then so there's a team, and the management style is like kind of, I wouldn't say it's a cookie cutter approach, but the industry, in Australia, it's like, oh cool, this is what it's set up for, because it's so small. They're like, we got to get this person and nurture them and get them to do this role, and then they get to this point, and then what's next? There's nothing. Like I saw this being a jazz musician. I started. You work your way up. Like, I wouldn't say I was clever or devious, but I'm like, cool, this person plays with this person, so then I got to get on a gig with this person, and then I got to play my ass off. They recommended me to the next person up the chain, and so I got to the point where I'd played with like all of the, I got to the top of the Australian jazz scene. There's maybe like 5 older guys I hadn't played with, and this is by the age of like 26 or something. And I was like, cool, I don't know what to do now. Kind of, my dream was to like come and live in New York and play in Chick Corea's trio. But, family relationship stuff kept me back. And, I was also in another band that was doing great in Europe and Australia. But, I can see how those things kind of work. And so with Donny, when it came to that, it was a really weird journey. And like now I'm not part of that industry at all. I don't fit into it's very like square peg, square hole, like I'm a round peg in a square hole. So I don't get on festivals, I just do my own shows, I do my own little weird content. I built my audience heaps over COVID, doing all those little bass videos, and which is fun for me because I'm a huge nerd, and it's like that stuff wouldn't fit into the industry thing. Like I had some people I was working with, I'm like, oh, I want to kind of do this, and it just didn't, there was no avenue for that. And so like, when I was over here in 2020, I should have contacted Chicago Music Exchange and come and said, hey, I'm Donny, can we do something? And they would have been, yeah, sure. Like, here's all my YouTube videos of me talking about my studio. You sell gear, I have gear, like, great. So it's like, now I'm just like I contacted Rig Rundown as a joke, because I'm like, my touring rig is like a tuner, an octave pedal, and a chorus pedal. And I'm like, it'd be pretty funny to do Rig Rundown and turn up with 3 pedals. And they loved it, and we did it. We did a rig rundown, and they saw the joke, and they're like, we just want to talk, it was fun. And I just started calling people, because I'm like, what would I like to see me doing? That. Yeah. And then the trick was, they're like, oh yeah, we're a huge fan of Donny. I was like, oh, awesome. That was easy.
Well, because of how oversaturated everything is in social media, and just the way that we consume music and everything, that people are now really craving authenticity more than
the amount of gear I look at, like the comment I was making before of like, oh cool, here's a new guitar maker. Oh, I want to try one of those basses. I'm in Australia, I can't try them. Look on YouTube. There's the guy that makes them playing. He can't really play, but they're, are they good instruments? And I'm like, what would be really cool if there was a great player that was just shredding on these, and you're like, sold. Like, I'll buy one of those.
Oh, Holger. From Sandberg. Like, he is an amazing player. I've been begging him, please do more playing videos. People love it. And like when he does, people love it.
People love it.
But he's doing everything over there. But you're absolutely right.
No, that's what I go like. I mean, I'm confident. I'm like, cool. I'm a okay bass player. I'm sure people, if they've heard of my music, they'll know that I'm an okay bass player. I usually like, oh, here's some videos I've done, and it's like, cool, let's do something. And so it's that simple now. And I'm like, it's the little like the bass I'm playing is went to their factory, there's 8 people working there. It's great. It's an awesome story. It's like there's a connectivity between the maker and then the artist that comes through. They've got a room set up so when artists are touring, they can drop by, and freaking Felix Pistorius pops in the other day, and they're just like, shit, it's like,
and he's just a dude.
He's just a dude, but it's that, like I'll see a wall of well-known guitars now and be like, it's that could be anyone playing that, or that kind of stuff's exciting. The authenticity is exciting. Like with my younger brother with his cymbals, he makes them in his workshop at his house.
And he plays them live.
And then he goes to the next room where his kit's set up, and he's got his camera set up, and he plays them, and everyone's like, shit, your playing's amazing. That cymbal sounds amazing. It's like, there you go. That's like
Yeah.
one-stop shop, you know. So it's I think it's a good, like, the oversaturation I feel, and even in music, like, it's with Spotify and socials and all that, like, it's been so oversaturated, especially after COVID now. Like, if you do something kind of unique and you do it well, even if you do something well, it'll cut through at some point. It won't be, and you'll have like a longer, like I always think, there's like is it long beard or long tail? That thing of like, Donny will be around for a while, but is it better to make $1 million in your first year and never make a cent again, or make $1 million over 15 years?
Sustainable growth is what we like to call that.
Like, there's one of my favorite guitarists, so I'm being a prior jazz musician, there's that label ECM, there's a guy called Ralph Towner. And Ralph Towner came and played at Sydney years ago at a venue and maybe got 100 people there. Ralph Towner's got like 30 plus ECM records that I've got all my favorite, you know, Eddie Gomez is on them. I think there's some Abercrombie stuff as well. All those great rhythm sections, some Jack DeJohnette, like amazing records. Like, he'll die and he leaves behind this discography of incredible music. I don't think he's made $1 million.
Right.
Then there'll be a band that was manufactured and not manufactured, but put through the machine that might have made $1 million. They probably owe $2 million in PR bills.
Right.
But then it'll stop, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like looking at that long.
There's longevity.
Yeah. So I think all those, if you do it well enough and you're like patient enough to hang around, and like, it's, you know, I mean, going on tour and like the support band traveling with us, like they're all crashing on couches and, you know, blow up beds, and, you know, I'm a bit established. We've got our own hotel rooms now, and I don't feel like, oh wow, you know, maybe I should be. It's not my responsibility or anything. I'm not saying it is, but as I was saying to them, yeah, like my first tours I did in Europe, I did 21 shows in 23 days.
Yeah.
I crashed in promoters' houses, like, you know, I was working for €150 a show.
Yeah.
I remember doing a festival that was like a happy accident that kind of set me up for the trajectory that I went on. And the night after, I was doing a show in Leipzig, and the promoters were like these 22-year-old kids, and they were squatting in like a third-floor apartment, and I was sleeping on this wooden slat, like all these wooden crates that was turned into a bed, you know, and I was just like laughing, like, I'll never have to do this again. Like, I've, you know, kind of done that. So it's like, it's tricky. You got to do that to get to. I mean, now I can afford like a Best Western or a Holiday Inn. So
Well, yeah, but
we're past Motel 6.
And we'll appreciate that.
No. There's a free breakfast.
Every industry is having people who try to hack that. It's like growth hack. Hacking was growth hack was a big thing, you know, 10 years ago. But everyone has their like snake oil that they're selling in order to achieve like this like instant overnight success. So it's like, well, like, I want to bypass all of that stuff. But then there's also the people who have put in their time and have longevity. It's like, oh, like, you haven't put in your time. And then there's this like resentment, and there's a bit of gatekeeping that happens and stuff. But I think, you know, as long as people have conviction and are authentic, they will be able to push through and like find their audience. That is the benefit, the plus side of having so much immediate access to all this music and things. Like, there is a plus side to Spotify, Bandcamp, etc.
No, it is.
Like, the Australian music scene, like how broad it is. Like, I learned so, like you all are just killing it right now. There's so many amazing acts coming out of there.
Yes.
And like, I wouldn't have known about it as much as I know about it now had it not been for something.
No,
there's a positive.
The amount of people I remember on my 2020, the 2020 tour in the States for me was like one where, you know, I went home with stars in my eyes, like the American dream didn't happen for me. You know, my agent at the time was working for I think UTA. I went for the meeting in Beverly Hills, and, you know, took a picture outside the sign, and they're like, yeah, and then, you know, they had the talent. They had 5 different departments. Like, here's the acting one, here's, you know, the one-stop shop. And I went back, I told my wife, like, this was like February 2020, and I was like, oh, I was like, you don't want to hear this, but I think we might have to move to the States. And I was like, you know, and then obviously COVID happened, but it was, where was I going with that? Oh, that's right, with the growth. So the amount of people at 2020, and why it was such a landmark tour for me, was that I reckon a third of the audience would come up at the end and be like, just found out about your music on Spotify 3 days ago. I had to buy a ticket. I was like, okay, like, it's a massive evil, but then it was offering me all these, like, I was going to America. I didn't have any PR agencies or campaigns.
Yeah.
I was working off my socials and then off Spotify. I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. I mean, if I was with a major label, I'd be getting $1 out of the 20 they make from a record anyway. So carrying around merch, that was I could see my financial growth coming from that. So yeah, it's a tricky one. Like, but the Australian thing is weird. Like, we're so isolated. We have to we kind of make our version of what we think is happening. And so, like, I remember with being a jazz musician, like, we'd play jazz with a very high degree of conviction, because we're like, well, if we're going to get the balls to go to New York, we've got to be able to play. And what would happen is the musicians, the good ones that would go over, like thinking I'm going to get my ass kicked, they'd come back and say, man, like, don't want to sound mean, but no one can really play over there, like, because they don't have to. It's such a big deal for us to leave Australia, travel all that way.
You got to be on.
Yeah, you got to be like ready to go. And then with music, like, because it's the scene in Australia is tiny. It's like we have one radio station. We have,
but it's efficient. It's doing well, man. Like
past 10 years. No, it's not. It's just all the bands you've heard of aren't supported by Australian industry.
Interesting.
So they've created something unique. Giz, Amel and the Sniffers,
Tame
Impala, of course. Alex Cameron, they're all like I'm good buddies with Alex. We were kind of in the same little Sydney group. We had our own weird scene, and that, like, we built a kind of community around. We weren't played on major radio. We played on the Sydney indie radio, maybe the Melbourne indie radio, which are kind of cool. And then I don't know how that gets overseas, because I think they're also really quirky and creative, and were good on socials when it came out. And I think, like, having a good presence on that, you've got to be good, and then you've also got to have. It's not a character; it's something. It's like you got to offer something different. Offer something that's genuine. That's what it is.
Yes.
As you said before.
Yeah.
That kind of translated, and then it piqued people's curiosity, I guess, overseas.
Yeah.
And I feel like Australian bands started first, did well in Europe, and then America would come a little bit afterwards. I remember when Giz started, it was like same time I was kind of starting, and it was like a joke. Here's a band with 2 drummers, like 10 people on stage. It was bigger back then. I was thinking, who the fuck's going to hire these guys? Like, how the hell are they going to tour with 10 people? Like,
they made it work. Love those guys.
Yeah,
Every time they would come through here. Kids
so it's that thing, and like, it's very, and I think it's given a very inspiring for Australian bands, because they've seen what success they can have. They're like, cool, I'm not so worried about kissing the ring of like one radio station now. I'm going to really work on my thing, take a chance and go to Europe, and, play to 100 people, and then that turns into 200 people the next time, and that turns to 500 people the next time.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you got to hang in there. Like 4 tours later, you're doing something. So
I think that, like, the U.S. market is starting to, like, there's like an instant credibility assigned to any act coming out of Australia who, like, comes over here and
I think it's been paved, the way's been paved.
Well,
you're
part of that too.
Maybe, I don't know.
I think so.
I think I also don't fit into the scene they're in. So like I really don't, and I always say this as a joke, like, I'm really unpopular in Australia. I'm kind of unpopular in Australia. Like, I've got my own loyal fan base that comes out, which is great, which I appreciate and love. Thank you guys. But like, outside of that, I'm a really hard thing to place. Like, my agent over there is like, another act that that would be lucky to get 200 people at their headline show, I can get them a festival slightly easier than I can get you, even though you do 1,000 cap room and you'll sell it out. They just look at it and go, like, I don't know if it's the look at something, but over here, like, man, America, I love it. There's an ask for every seat. Like, I love coming here for that reason. You've got something to sell, someone's going to buy it. So, you just think of all the weird American cars or guitars or inventions. Like, someone bought that shit.
Yeah.
Like, in Australia, they'd be like, nah. Like, people can only afford one thing. Over in America, everyone wants something. So it's definitely a cool market to get to. But then I'm finding this tour's going great, but it's definitely like, there is a lot of shit on offer. Like, we played New York, there's so many venues in New York. The night we played a Saturday night, there was so many good acts on that night. Like,
yeah,
it's insane. Like in Australia, in Sydney, there's like 2 or 3 shows on in Sydney on a Saturday night, and they usually don't cross over. Like, I think my agent accidentally booked myself and a friend who kind of do something similar once in Brisbane. He's like, oh no, like, you've both lost half your audience because people are working out.
Oh yeah, either I can go here or I can go there.
Whereas over here, it's just like you're competing with so many good things, and it's like there was a TV series I was watching where a French comedian comes over to the States, and he's not funny, and like over there he's the Jerry Seinfeld of France, and he comes here and he's like, I'm not funny, and he's the guy staying with like a really bad failed actor, and he's like, America, he's like, she's not as easy as she looks, and I'm like, yeah, it's like this time around, I'm like, it's not hard, but I'm like, it's not like shooting fish in a barrel. Like, say you go to Europe, and you get the Dutch on your side, it's like, they're great, they're crazy and so loyal and awesome.
And they'll tell you when you fuck up.
No, exactly, and that's cool as well. Yeah, so like
they don't mix words at all. I love it.
Oh no, it's that definite lost in Germans. I mean, yeah. Why is the music not funky tonight?
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, our drummer's having a bad night. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a drummer's fault.
Yeah.
We talked earlier a little bit about like some of the gear you got.
Yes.
And I wanted to touch on that because you said you're building a house.
Yep.
Studio.
Yep.
Are you recording most of your stuff at home?
Yep.
And that leads me to what's like your
everything goes directly into an Apollo twin.
That's what you're no preamping, you're going direct to the Apollo twin.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
that's my question.
That's another world to get into, which I will at some point, but yeah.
So you're just taking your bass is going direct. I imagine you're using some plugins.
It's all here, and then I think, I mean, I'm lucky. I've got a really good friend who's great, really great. He does all the mixing for me, and I love it because I'll bring him a record that I'm trying to make sound like Steely Dan or Chic, and then he'll just take a big shit on it and like he'll put a leather jacket on it, and it's like I'll listen to some of the bass tones. I'm like, it's like, wow, you've got it like. I gave you like a crystal clean Stingray with flats, which sounded exactly like Bernard. Yeah. And you've put it through some drive, and I'm like, that's not what I do. And then I hear it in context. I'm like, wow, you've elevated what I've given you. Yeah. It's almost like he's another musician involved in it or something, and it's great. So, but yeah, everything's recorded like super
dry,
clean.
Straight.
Yeah. Like, I'd like to get into, going back and getting some tapes and like even like committing and printing something to tape. Yeah. Like I wish I could do. I want to get into doing that. I think. Yeah. I'm really bad with learning shit. Like I've got one of those. I think I've got a visual brain, like a visual learning process. Like I'll start putting something together with instruction, be like, I can't do this, and just put it together. Yeah. So anytime I sit down and go, cool, I'm going to learn how to use compression, I'm like, oh, this is boring. I'm just going to make it so it sounds
Start
good.
turning some knobs and see.
Yeah, like I did that with myself and synthesis. I worked out my own little way, and then years later I was like, oh, I should watch some videos. There was like this cool 80s video of like, Rick Johnson's synthesis course. And then I was like, oh, all the 80s house stuff. I'm like, that's how I thought of it. Like the way he explained it, I'm like, yeah, that's how I'd kind of got to that point in my head. So I'm like, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm just going to turn it off. And
like, this is what this does. This is what this
I
does.
have the ARP 2600 book. I bought an ARP 2600 off a friend, the Korg one, and they reprinted that, which I think I've lost in my move. I'll find it in a box somewhere. But there's like a manual on how to use it. But it's apparently like, this is the guy that wrote it, because they were meant to be like for schools. Like
sure, yeah.
And so the way he's written it is just amazing. Like this is the way to explain synthesis properly. Yeah. I still haven't gotten around to reading it yet. So,
well, it's probably a lot.
No, I mean, I just don't have a spare, like, if I'm not recording or I'm not touring or I'm not tour planning, it's like,
well, and
really
you're also
really hard to put this time aside.
Right. Well, because you're a musician, so you're really using your ear.
And
right?
I'm an ear player as well. Like,
so like, who cares if it's a saw wave or a square wave or whatever?
I mean, I went through my jazz degree. I remember I turned up and like seeing chords, symbols, and I was like, oh, like C major 7 sharp 11, and each chorus, which is like the 30, you guys know what choruses are. Each chorus, I get to the beginning, I'd be thinking of 11, C, D, E, F, G, A. Then I'd get to the end of the chorus and forget what the note was again. Fuck. So I'd like stayed behind for 3 months learning like everything, like these are the notes, these are the intervals, this is what this note is. And then pretty much used my ears and my bass teacher, and then I had a teacher who was a pianist who was a great composer, and like she was one of the founding Australian jazz. They're all ear players. And then all the old guys I played with, they're all ear players. Yeah. And so the whole like, and then anytime I try and apply a theoretical approach, I just practice, play what I practiced or something, it wouldn't work. And so after a while, it took me a while because I thought I was always faking it. I'm like, no, I'm not faking it. It's just like, it's an instinctive way. And that's kind of, the people that are doing the theory are trying to get to where I'm at.
Yeah.
And so
So it's just reflexive now.
Yeah, well, it totally is. And then, I mean, even playing, like singing and playing the Donny bass stuff, like I have to go to like Donny Bootcamp. When it's time to tour a new record, 3 months before the first rehearsal, I've got to make this all, what do you call it? Well, you don't have to think about it.
Fit in the pocket?
No.
Like instinctive?
Yeah. What's the word I'm looking for? Autopilot.
Autopilot.
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah. I have, so the whole gig is autopilot. Like, these aren't connect. Like, I have to work, and the tricky thing is because of the style of music, there's a lot of stuff on offbeats.
Yep. Yeah.
But then it'll complement the lyric, which is on an on-beat, and so that's really hard to like do that and then do.
I have the worst time.
So I can't play. If you asked me to play a Beatles song, singing and playing bass, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I have to make this like purely instinctive, and that's cool. Like, and that's where that guilt of, not guilt, but that like feeling of being fraudulent, of being an ear player. I'm like, no, that's like, it's the way you do it. It's a good thing. Mm-hmm. Even seeing like, if you talk about an instrument, like when my guy in Sydney will set action, he sets it by feel, whereas you'll watch Stumac videos on YouTube, and they've got like this tool, and it's like, and someone's like, well, I set my the nut to be 0.34 millimeter inches off that or whatever. It's like the guy that sets my Sydney guy is like, he's like, no, this is here you go.
And the amount of times where like I would get an inquiry about like, what is the factory setup? What do you all? How do you all set up everything? And then like, well, that's a complicated. Yeah. This is a complicated answer for this, right? Because every piece of wood is going to be different. All like every little minute detail or speck on that thing,
radius, all of it plays a factor.
Not even just radius, just like where the frets are. Like everything impacts everything else.
Right.
So it's not so simple, and I think a feel thing is very important. Mike Tobias is very much about feel,
which is cool. Like, I mean, that's I mean, even like you working on a car, tuning it, like you'll hear where it's where it's talking to you, where it's sounding like it's it's which is cool. Like, and music's supposed to be like an organic and natural way of doing things. I mean, so I don't feel guilty about it anymore. But that's cool. There's also there's people's ways of doing things. I mean, I was doing a little video for you before, Mark, and I thought I was a good bass player, and then anytime I record some content on video, like if I don't have it in the first take, it just falls apart. And I'm like, man, I don't know how all the Instagram musicians.
Oh man,
do
you don't know how many demos. I like don't watch demos that I record after I release them.
Because you know how many like takes you took.
Well, it's like I'm never happy with what's out there, like the way I played it or whatever. I just at an early point in my life, I was like, I'm just going to put it out there, and this
which
is what
cool
I gotta
because
do,
I see all that stuff that's perfect, and it's so cold.
Yeah.
And I'm like there's I don't want to be mean, but there's like. There'll be, I don't know what country this guy's from, there's one of those guys that plays, they always pop up and I'm like, oh fuck, get out of the way. And it's like, plays guitar like perfectly and they'll play bass perfectly. And I'm like, man, it sounds like NAMM on steroids, and that's been quantized, and like any degree of musicality has been sucked out of it a long time ago. And I'm like, and then you'll see like those guys, I think post-pandemic they've started doing gigs, and you'll watch footage of them playing a live gig, and it's like, man, that's the most boring shit. And it's a room full of like 45-year-old guys. I'm like,
Right.
it's like, I'm like, ooh.
Shredding out.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know. I mean, you know, but yeah, it's good to know, like, if with music, the approach, like, if you're doing a feel thing and then like seeing guys making an act, like George Filonetto did I turned this bass into a jazz bass the other day. And he was just like, yeah, I'll do it. He was just super chill and just ripped into it. And I was like, cool, this guy's in his 70s. He's been doing it, you know.
Right.
It was like
so
basic. And I was like, oh, sorry, Marcel, like, we've got 4 hours to get it done. He's like, it's going to be tight. And his dad's like, no, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. It's like, you know, do it with my eyes closed. It's like,
Can
cool.
you tell us a little bit about your bass?
Yeah, so this is, I popped by F-Bass last year in Hamilton after a gig in Toronto. And I think I'd seen this through, I found out about F-Bass through Steve Swallow, because I'm a huge jazz nerd and Steve Swallow's like my favorite player. And I saw a picture of him with a P-bass cut down with a fill in the neck. And I think it was when it was with his partner. And but I was like, oh, I'll type in Steve Swallow Federa. I'm like, it's not a Federa.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out what it was. And I was like, cool. And then I think I saw like the Scott's bass guy had them, and I'm like, they started popping up. I was like, oh, I'll try one of these. And I was like, wow, I like crashed someone's appointment, played it. They offered to make me one for a nice deal, and I was like, yeah, sure. And it's just a great live bass. Like the preamp is amazing. I've always played passive basses.
Yeah.
Probably my preferred thing. Mm-hmm. So I mean, the Stingray's a Stingray, and that does gives you that sound, that preamp. But for live, it's just phenomenal in that because I rely so much on wedge mix because I'm singing.
Yeah.
I'm nowhere near my bass amp. So I could, when I tour next time, I'll probably have a little 10-inch thing, whatever's enough to give a bit of a signal. But
yeah.
I can just adjust, dial in, you know, it just saves time to say, you know, can you take out 1K? I'm like, oh, it needs more bass,
Yeah.
And it just cuts through, which is great for me singing because I need to hear a really clean, direct bass tone. Like I brought my 77 Jazz over last year. That was cool. It was great, awesome bass. Sometimes I get a little lost when things, because we're playing with tracks sometimes as well. So this thing just cuts straight through, and it feels like an old instrument, which is really cool. I'm always skeptical of new instruments, and you know, going off of playing something non-Fender is always weird because everyone's used to Fenders.
Yeah.
But it feels great. Like I couldn't be happy with it. I got the PJ option. It's cool. Like I'm just not the biggest PJ guy. I was running it as a P bass. A lot of the new record was recorded on jazz bass, and I was like, oh, this is probably going to be handier. And I knew I'd do a bit of muting, but I knew with the preamp it would give that a bit more body and girth, so it still sound big around, which it does. Yeah. And so
is this mahogany?
Mahogany, ash.
Ash in the middle.
No, ash. Sorry, it's rock maple.
Okay.
And then it's the Mikasa ebony.
Ebony fretboard.
And then I spec'd it up total 80 specs. Like, then it's got the Wenge 5-piece neck. That's got Don stamped in there, which is cool.
Yeah, I saw that.
Every bass of mine has the
drop.
Because I don't do a 5-string, but which was weird because I was thinking maybe I should get a 5, but then you lose that ability to.
Yeah.
And then you kind of slapping all the second, you know, if that kind of makes sense. So it's like, and I was just always brought up on 4, and I mean, I will get a 5 soon, but yeah, and it looks cool. I don't know, like they were so well made, like the level of detail, and like this is a very, very nicely made instrument. It'll last a while. It'll last a long time. It'll sound good a long time. Yeah, I don't know.
It might even sound better with age.
It's already. I was really surprised when we had it the other day. Like I've already started to really eat into the frets. They're all yellow from my super duper sweat.
Well, that can always be fixed though.
No, yeah, I mean, which is fine. No, but
that's the funk.
It is the funk. They didn't want to clean it the other day. I was like, oh, yeah, maybe you should. But yeah, it's just. I mean, I've got so many basses, and like this isn't, and they're cool because they're like you can play whatever bass you want.
Yeah.
And I think now that's like. I think a lot of the smaller companies now, like that's the approach everyone's taking. It's not like the 90s where
you have to have it 90% of the time on camera in publications. We set up interviews. You have to do clinics, all those things.
All that kind of stuff doesn't exist.
Like the most refreshing thing about working for a company that's similar to F-Bass, working for Sandberg, even Bergantino, you got to use the right tool for the job. Yeah. Plus, since the landscape has changed a lot, you know, it's like if you look at this as a marketing expense, instead of like dropping, you know, X thousands of dollars on paid print ads and ad space and stuff like that, it's like, okay, let's use this instrument as an investment. Yeah. And then like get some video content and just say like, this is the agreement. We need X amount of video content, right? And like, you know, like maybe a couple quotes for our website, and then it's yours.
Well, that's the thing. Like I've used labella strings, which is like it's always been. It's like my teenage fantasy of, because buying strings in Australia is insane.
Yeah.
Like $50. They've been $50 since I can remember.
Yeah.
Which $50 20 years ago was a shitload of money.
Mm-hmm. 50 now, still a shitload of money.
Yeah, I mean, and so getting like, I met James Cabernetti in New York like 15 years ago, 12 years ago or something. Mm-hmm. And then I think I just emailed Lorenz at the bill and like, would I be able to be an artist endorsee or something? They're like, yeah, and I get strings, which is great. And I finally got a good hang with Eric the other day, and he's like, man, like, because we're talking about this, because I said, you know, it's the landscape's changing so much now, like it's all the little guys that are doing well, and you know, everyone's using stuff, and he's like, well, the thing is, like, years ago I put an ad in Bass Player magazine, and you know, it cost me 20 grand or whatever it is to run for the year, and he's like, but I didn't know what metrics I was getting from it.
Yeah,
you know?
there's
like now it's like, you know, we put our products out there to players like you. You're posting about them. We see, oh look, Donny got 1,000 likes. That's 1,000 people that
we saw that today.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and that's like, and it works like, you know, my younger brother with his cymbals. That's a tricky one because a cymbal's an expensive thing to make. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to throw them out like strings, but it's like that's how you're going to get. Because I mean, I don't think magazines exist anymore. Mm-hmm. Maybe they do for older, I don't know. It's an easier thing to do now. And then people are going to like. I saw some of the F-bass artists. They're then also playing Sandberg and they're also playing Fender.
Yeah.
And that's cool. And it's like, well, yeah. When I want a slap song, I'm going to play out my Marcus Miller thing. When I want a song where it needs to sound like a Stingray, because the band, I forget the name's Nicole.
Oh, Incubus.
Yeah. So then we need a song where it's a Stingray. Pull out the Sandberg with the Stingray pickup. Mm-hmm. Then we need a song, you know, where it's a really direct sound. Pull out the F-bass. Mm-hmm. Right. It's smart.
Yeah.
All three. Everyone's happy. It's like, I mean, you know, like no one's getting shit for free.
From the manufacturer side, like I try to be as respectful as possible of endorsements and stuff and relationships because we all know each other. We've all met each other. I'm a fan of what George has been doing. I've been a fan for a long time. And I'm a fan of, you know, like, I mean, I'm a fan of Fender basses as well, just because of like the legacy that has created in recorded music. And I'm a huge fan of labella strings and stuff. So like there are some manufacturers, or at least their reps, who are definitely like trying to get all the, you know, attention and like stealing all the artists and stuff. But like, I think more and more like there are manufacturers who are starting to realize that like this is a collaborative thing. It's a strength in numbers thing. If like just because this company is on the rise doesn't mean we're losing customers.
No.
It's like we've got to find a way to coexist. And I'm really starting to feel that now more and more with like builders specifically like F-bass, labella, Sandberg, etc. Like it's in Bergantino. Like we're all kind of like trying to work together.
And that's the weird thing. Like I still get people saying, I'll put a video on YouTube and like, oh, the algorithm brought me to your video. Then the first thing they do is watch the other videos, and they go to your socials, and then they scroll through your socials. Mm-hmm. Top of the page, you're holding an F-bass. Halfway down the page, you're holding a P-bass. Halfway down the page, next page, you're holding a Ken Smith. Mm-hmm. So they're like, Ken Smith, Fender, F-bass. They're all recognized by that new person that's discovering you, and they're like, oh wow, this person is, I like what they're doing. These are the tools they're using. Here they are. It's like, it's so different. Like it's not like, here is the Donny Benet Fender jazz bass, and you have to use that. Like Stu Ham back in the days when they made the Urge bass, like you had to use that. It's like, oh, that's, and then they're trying to make the bass as versatile. I'll be American, say versatile as possible. And like, cool, we're going to try and make this jazz bass that now can sound like a P bass, jazz bass, a Stingray, and its own thing, Tobias, and then something different. It's like, it ain't gonna happen. Like,
well, just like how you mentioned, like how you came across the F bass. Like, I mean, I was at Bass Club. We were selling lots of F basses 15 years ago.
Yeah.
You know,
That's crazy. Yeah.
But you may have, like you said, somebody scrolls on your thing and they see you playing an F bass, and maybe they're not familiar with F bass.
Yeah.
But then they scroll and they go, oh, I know Ken Smith. Oh, I know Music Man. Oh, I know Fender. So like if this guy is co-signing on all, like, I know all those things are great, and he's also playing an F bass, there's probably some credibility to that person playing that instrument. So I think it's, you know, there is definitely a positive to being, you know, a musician who's playing multiple different things, and then instead of just trying to make one instrument fit everything, you know. But there's guys like Pino Palladino who is only going to play a P bass, and no matter what he plays, it's going to sound great, and it's going to fit, it's going to work.
Oh man, Nick, I can make like a $100 SX precision bass sound good. Yeah, they sound fine. Like when I used to teach a lot, a student would bring in a $100 student bass. I was like, you know, get out my Allen key, fix it for him. I'm like, man, this is fine. Like, this is, you know, I've got my 1966 P bass here. I'm like, well, your neck is better than mine. Like, or, no, your frets are finished better than mine, or whatever, you know, or better condition. Right. But yeah, that's the other thing. Part of is the thrill of hunting for that elusive instrument, and then getting it. I mean, I've definitely had like lots of dopamine rushes, like finally finding a bass, getting it shipped from Japan, getting it there, and then you go like, oh, cool. And you're like, all right, what's next?
Yeah. Well, that brings everything full circle, I think, with like, you know, using the right tool for the job.
No, totally.
So now I think would be a good time to maybe bust out some rapid fire.
We're running out of time here.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
So we've got some rapid fire questions here. There are no wrong answers. Kind of the first thing that pops in your head. I'm going to ask you a bunch of music bass related.
Sure.
Mark might ask you some non-bass related questions afterwards. So, rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Active or passive?
Passive.
Maple, rosewood, or favorite fretboard material?
Rosewood/ebony.
Okay. Do you have a favorite speaker size?
Everyone says 12s.
12s are good. I like 12s. This is a hard one to answer. Do you have a favorite bass player or a couple of your favorite bass players?
Steve Swallow. Who was the other guys I always like? Bernard. I'm going to say Steve Swallow and Bernard. And what's the guy? Leon Silvers. I'm just discovering, like, oh, this is the guy that's responsible for half the shit I like. Yeah.
Awesome. Do you have a piece of gear you regret getting rid of?
I could borderline say I had a nice 91 Stingray 5 with the Alnico pickup and a really good bird's eye neck, but that funded my Ken, so
yes and no.
Yeah.
It was more usable than the Ken touring wise.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as cool. So yeah, I'm going to say that's it.
Okay. Do you prefer combo amps or head cabinet separate?
To be honest, I just go through mainly most of the time my Apollo and then NS10s. So I'm going to say it's very rare I play with an amp. And if I do play an amp on stage, I'm usually listening to wedges. But I'm going to say head and cab.
Separate. Hard case or gig bag?
Well, see, if I was an American, I'd say gig bag. But in Australia, they don't let you take your bass on board.
Oh.
So in Europe, this guy went under the plane a couple of times.
Oof, yeah.
And in Australia, can I swear on this?
Sure.
Yeah, the baggage handlers are cunts. They just throw shit. I've had double basses broken, so I have to travel with a coffin in Australia. So, but I will say touring at the moment, my mono is, as everyone uses, is beautiful. Throw it in the back of the van, take it up to the hotel at the end of the night.
That's awesome.
I'm not lugging this big hard case.
Bulky thing.
Yep.
Tube or solid state?
I'm gonna say solid state.
You're not the first one. You're not the first one. What's your current bass rig?
Well, if I'm
a UA Apollo.
No. As in for the rig as in amp or rig as in
yeah, like your bass amp setup, and I mean clearly you're playing that bass.
Playing this at the moment, and then at home I have the I've got Aguilar 410 and the head, but on tour Mark has hooked me up with a beautiful Bergantino.
Nice.
So yeah, which I'm enjoying very much.
Nice. Do you have a favorite pedal?
Octave. What have I got? The
like I'm OC2 or?
Yeah, well, I have an OC2, but the old one. I got to say the DoD Octoplus is the best.
Okay.
That was used by, I discovered it by Gary Granger playing it on the Dennis Chambers instructional video.
Yeah.
I had one from my childhood. It died. I bought a second-hand one. It's faulty. The octave's kind of on all the time. I'm on an OC2. Doesn't track as well. The Octoplus tracks for days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Never a missed note. So
All right.
I'm probably going to buy another Octoplus again. Should get one over here.
Nice little endorsement there.
Yes. They don't make them, so I can't get anything out of it.
I think I know the answer to this one. Favorite strings?
Labella.
Labella.
RX stainless steel.
Those are great.
And I've got some. They got the new ones. I'm trying the low tension. A little too low tension for me.
Yeah.
I think the newer Linto ones I'm trying.
The deep talking strings are really, really great.
I think I've got an old set. You know how like flats, like the older the better. So I think I've got a set that go when I put flats on. I think I've got a set that's 20 years old. I'm pretty. Actually, no, they're 15 years old because I think I got them when I first met James, and they just gave us a whole bunch of strings. And I think they're black cloth, so I don't think they're deep talking.
Oh, the nylon.
No,
you mean the
top? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure what they are. I know they're Labella because but they're
Nice.
Labella the best.
Do you have a favorite hardware finish? Black, gold, chrome, nickel?
If this is, because I was trying to go 80s. This is black, gold.
Gold.
More nickel. Like I'm getting a P-bass made, and I kind of wanted to. I bought some nice oval gotas that I want to throw in, get them all funky.
And some vinegar or something like that. Well, that is actually leads us into our next question. How do you feel about relict instruments?
Funny, conflicted. There's a bigger known company that I was looking at before, the Relics.
Yeah.
And I don't like the Relic where they've like got a sounder and going, it's like, that's not how shit wears. Jimmy's Relics are just out of this world.
Yeah.
The guy in Sydney that I use, he does some Relic and it's really subtle and it's how stuff is. He's the guy like where they're like better than Custom Shop. And he specializes in making L series guitars, and he gets them. Like our guitarist bought one that he just made. The patina is like there and maybe there, and it's like
that's about it.
Yeah, he could have gone. It's he didn't hold back. He's like, no, this is how it would have worn. Like he did it in regard to the finish. The finish is very lightly relic, so it's like this guitar is like would have been used, but used by someone but put away for 20 years and that kind of vibe. He's not like here's somebody who's had a guitar and like dragged it behind a car on their way from Nashville to, it's like, that's, for me, that's not like a true relic. So having said that, the Sandberg relic you showed me was pretty awesome.
Oh, that's good to know.
That's kind of like, there's like the art patina relic, which is like, there's a skill in that. And then there's like, looking at the custom order, let's do some relic finishes. That's not so hot.
All right. A band or artist you wish you could play with, either for like an album or a tour. Is there someone you'd like to sit in with?
Dead or alive? I reckon like Steely Dan. I'd be up for the challenge.
Nice.
That
would be a challenge.
There's the Steely Dan book where Chuck Rainey sent one of his students to go and do he had another session. He's like, can't make it for the first hour. Turn up, take one bass. Don't turn up early, turn up on time. Take a P bass and you'll be fine. Student turned up 2 hours early with 4 basses and like sat in the control room like talking, and then Fagan was like, don't send that guy again. So it's like, I'd turn up with an old P bass with flats, and then well, it depends. If they were alive now, it would be a different thing because there's the Pro Tools era. They might want like a Lackland kind of active or some kind of vibe. It would be a bit trickier to. You do your research. You gotta do your research. Not in the like. I did my research, COVID vaccination kind of research. Just like, I've done my research.
Well, that wraps it up for the bass portion of the rapid fire. Mark, do you have any?
Do you use mustache, like for your mustache, beard oil or balm?
Nothing. I haven't washed my hair in 15 years, and I kind of do that and twist it. And,
Perfect. Do you use a comb for it?
No.
What's your favorite pizza that you've had? Style of pizza on the U.S. tour?
On the U.S. tour, we had just nothing beats like a mushroom and sausage and sweet peppers, that kind of vibe.
Okay,
like a New York slice.
A New York slice specifically.
Yeah.
Did you find?
I haven't done deep dish yet, and I just feel like I'd be blocked up for a week if I had it.
Yeah, so. That's usually.
We'll send one over to the green room.
I mean, we did Texas in the South for the first week and a half, and.
Good eats.
You kind of like, you blocked up. And
just a sodium fix,
Yeah.
Did you, have you gone to Buc-ee's yet, the gas station?
I went to Buc-ee's. I've done the
brisket sandwich?
Yes, I did. I grabbed a burrito and a brisket and a pulled pork sandwich.
What's your favorite gas station in the U.S. so far?
Probably be Bucky's. I mean, I can see what everyone's proud about. But then we didn't get a chance to sample the like the New York State Bucky's, like the the ones where you go past and they look like Hamptons houses. Like the stations are like really.
I haven't seen those.
Oh, they're just like, it's like a Bucky's, but like a really big thing, but really high end. Like you get on there and get like a Maine lobster roll or something like that.
Awesome. So you're a runner. What's your go-to like trainer shoes?
Oh shoot! I used to like the Nike Freeze, and then I got fatter, and then they stopped making them because they were fucking everyone's knees up. And I was like, no, I never had problems with them. Then I got a set of like Asics Sauconys, and stuffed my knees up. And so now I'm onto Asics, and these guys are good. I used to cycle heaps.
Yeah.
And being a dad, I have no time. You know, cycling takes like an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah.
I got to get in the half-hour power run, and then being 43, I'm jogging now, and the area I'm in, there's all like 40-year-old guys running from their heart attacks. So they've got that look in their eyes, like I have to do this because I'm going to not be around for my kids in 10 years. So I'm in that camp.
Yeah. Well, man, thank you so much for
pleasure.
coming out here. Thank you again to Chicago Music Exchange for letting us use the space again. Jody likes to ask this question, but I'm going to steal it from you really quickly. If anybody wants to find you, where do they need to find you?
Let's go on my Instagram. I'm the bald shirtless guy that'll steal your wife.
Yeah.
What's what's the?
Oh, my website is donnybenet.com.
And then you're pretty active on Instagram.
Pretty active, unfortunately, yes. YouTube, I got all my bass nerd instructional videos where I actually don't teach anyone how to play the song. I just be a smartass and go, this is how you play it. And
just play it.
I usually play it fretless so no one can see.
Yeah.
I can see because I've got the cheat marks.
Yeah. Nice.
So there's all the comments like, oh, does anyone have tab? I'm like, tab, come on.
Come on.
Yeah.
Use your ears, man.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, I think that'll wrap us up then for today. I know you got to get out of here, and you're on tour now.
I'm going to get a parking ticket soon, so I better go.
Yeah.
And then how long is the rest of the tour in the
We've
US?
got 10 more shows.
Okay, so we'll try to get
Chicago
this
going down, and then going West Coast. So come out, support me. I'll give you a good show.
Sweet. Thank
Awesome.
you again, man.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Peace.